Hey everyone, Shelley Brown here from Orlando, Florida. Um, I have just been chomping at the bit to share something with y'all, and I've been hesitant the last couple of months to share some videos and some thoughts because there's a lot out there. Everything's online right now, right? And there's a lot of noise out there. A lot of it's good, a lot of it not so good, but there's a lot of it that's good. And so, but this time I sense that I need to share this with y'all because the Lord just given me some really fresh revelation from my own heart that I am absolutely certain is for somebody who's going to watch this. And if it's just one, it's okay, but I believe that there's more than just one. So last Saturday morning, I woke up. Just again, I'm going to be very transparent with you, and I try to be very transparent when I share. Just very heavy and in a pit, and it's been hard. As I'm sure I'm not the only one, with the sheltering in the isolation and just everything that's going on right now in our country. It's heavy. There's a lot of crisis going on right now. And so last Saturday I woke up and it was early in the morning. And I said, Lord, I need to hear from you. I said, I am at the end of myself. And listen, I had been employing every spiritual discipline that I knew to employ. Worship, praise, immersing myself in his word, pressing in, standing on his promises, replacing those lies, immediately trying to take them into captivity, every thought that would come in that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, right? Everything that I knew. And I was still struggling. I would get myself out of the pit just long enough. I think Psalm 40, where he lifted me out of the miry pit and set my feet on the rock, right? And I would get myself up there on the rock, and then a few hours later, boom, right back down. So last Saturday, I said, Lord, I'm at the end of myself. I'm at my wits' end. I need to hear from you. And he led me to Psalm 107. And that's what I want to share with y'all today. And I hope you will stick with me with this, not because of my words, but because of what his word says. And I've read Psalm 107 many times, but last Saturday was different, what he revealed to me. And so I want to go through, not the end, it's a long chapter, and I want you to read it on your own when you have time. But I just want to cover 4 different areas in this chapter real quickly, okay? Please hang with me because it's really good, okay? There's 4 different people that are described in this chapter, all right? The first one is in verse 4. I'm going to read it. It says, they wandered in the wilderness in a desolate way. They found no city to dwell in. Hungry and thirsty, their soul fainted in them. All right, so here we have a weary traveler, somebody who's been on a long journey. We've been on a long journey, and possibly a wilderness journey. They're tired, they're thirsty, they need rest, they need a guide. They're exhausted, right? That's the first one. The second one is found in verse 10. We're going to skip down there, okay? Those who sat in darkness and in the shadow of death, bound in affliction and irons, because they rebelled against the words of God and despised the counsel of the Most High. Therefore he brought down their heart with labor and fell down, and there was none to help. In this one, we have a weary captive. This is someone who's bound. He's a prisoner, or she's a prisoner, and she's bound, and she needs freedom. She needs a deliverer. All right, so we have the weary traveler who needs a guide, right, and rest. And then we have the weary captive, the prisoner, the one who's bound, who needs freedom and a deliverer. And then we go down to verse 17. Fools, because of their transgressions and because of their iniquities, were afflicted. Their soul abhorred all manner of food, and they drew near to the gates of death. Now here we're talking about someone who's sick. Now it could be a soul sickness, somebody who's very broken, very wounded from their past. They have a lot of hurt in their life, or it could be a physical sickness. Nonetheless, this particular person or people, they need a physician. They need the healer. So we have the weary traveler who needs a guide and needs rest. Then we have the weary captive who needs freedom and deliverance. And then we have the sick one who needs a healer and a physician. And then the fourth one is, oh, this is so good. Those who go down to the sea in ships, who do business on great waters. This is in verse 23. They see the works of the Lord and his wonders in the deep. For he, capital H, he, God, commands and raises the stormy wind, which lifts up the waves of the sea. They mount up to the heavens and they go down to the depths. Their soul melts because of their trouble. They reel to and fro and stagger like a drunken man and are at their wits' end. That's how I felt last Saturday when I asked the Lord. I said, I need to hear from you. I'm at my wits' end. And here it is. It's in Psalm 107, verse 27. So in this, the fourth person here is a sailor that's being tossed to and fro on the ocean. And the sailor needs safe haven, needs tranquility, needs peace, needs calm, right? And in this particular portion of this psalm, this is a storm that God drove them into. Now, not all storms in our life are created by God. A lot of the storms in our lives are because of our own choices, because of the choices of other people. But there are, I would suggest many times, that God creates the storm and allows us to go into that storm. Because in this particular portion of this chapter, he knew that it was going to take the storm to get to the point where they got to the end of themselves and they were at their wits' end. All right, so we have the weary traveler who needs rest and needs a guide. We have the weary captive who needs freedom and the deliverer. We have the sick one, sick of soul or physically sick, who needs the healer. And we have the storm-tossed sailor who needs a safe haven, needs tranquility, needs peace. So we have these four different people. Now, I don't know about you, but actually, no, I think I do know about you. I'm going to just go out on a limb and say that every single person who's watching this, you can identify with one of these. For me, I can identify with more than one right now. But this is a blueprint and a roadmap for all of us. I want to go back to each of these four, and I want to go to the verse that is right after the description of each of these: the traveler, the captive, the sick one, the storm-tossed sailor. Listen to this. Hang with me. I'll finish up in a second. In verse 6, then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them out of their distresses, and he led them forth by the right way, that they might go to a city for a dwelling place. They cried out to the Lord, and he delivered them out of their distresses. All right, let's go down to the weary captive in verse 13. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them out of their distresses, and he brought them out of darkness and out of the shadow of death, and broke their chains in pieces. He broke their chains in pieces. That's the captive. Let's go down to verse 20 for the sick one. In verse 19. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them out of their distresses. And then in verse 20, and he sent his word and healed them and delivered them from their destructions. Now, he could have sent out this miraculous divine intervention, just, you're healed. And he does that. But here, he sent out his word and healed them and delivered them from their destruction. His word has power. All right, let's go down to the storm-tossed sailor. Over here in verse 28, then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he brings them out of their distresses. He calms the storm so that its waves are still. Then they are glad because they are quiet, so he guides them to their desired haven. All right, so they all cried out to the Lord, and he delivered them all out of their distresses. He set them free. He broke the chains. He healed them with his word. He sent them into a safe haven. He calmed the storms. All right, I want to go back to each of these one final time and watch what happens after they cried out and he delivered them. In verse 8, for the traveler, oh, that men would give thanks to the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works to the children of men, for he satisfies their longing soul and fills the hungry soul with gladness. He, capital H, he alone satisfies the longing soul. He's the only one who can satisfy us. The only one who can satisfy us. Go down here to the weary captive who needs freedom and deliverer. In verse 15, after they cried out to the Lord, oh, that men would give thanks to the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works to the children of men. For he, capital H, has broken the gates of bronze and cut the bars of iron in two. He alone sets us free. Let's go down one more to the sick one. Oh, that men would give thanks to the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works to the children of men. For let them sacrifice the sacrifices of thanksgiving and declare his works with rejoicing. Storm-tossed sailor, would they say, oh, that men would give thanks to the Lord for his goodness, for his wonderful works to the children of men. Let them exalt him also in the assembly of the people. Let them praise him. So here we have the blueprint. Whichever one you identify, whichever ones you identify with. Here's the blueprint. Cry out to the Lord. Cry out to the Lord. There's a big difference between praying and crying out to the Lord. Listen, I have this ongoing dialogue with the Lord. I pray daily. And I tell him everything. I talk to him constantly. I lift others up in prayer. There's a difference between praying and crying out to God. Recently, I've been crying out to him with my whole heart and soul. And I think we're at a place right now where, y'all, we need to be crying out to God on behalf of our own lives, those in our families, our friends, our church, our country, our leaders, our neighbors. We need to be crying out to God and taking him at his word that he says that they cried out to him and he heard them and he delivered them from their distresses. And then I would suggest that we don't wait until he delivers us. I suggest that, anybody can rejoice and thank him when the answer comes and the deliverance comes. But let's praise him for his goodness and for his answers and for who he is before the answer ever comes. Can we do that? The very last verse in this chapter. This is incredible. This is verse 43. Listen to this, and then I'll be done. Whoever is wise will observe these things, and they will understand the loving kindness of the Lord. I'm going to read it one more time. Whoever is wise will observe all these things, and they will understand the loving kindness of the Lord. Oh, y'all. Immerse yourself in his word. Take him at his word. I've had a new love for the Psalms over the last weeks. David and the psalmists throughout the book of Psalms. It's this pouring out, this crying out. In Psalm 142, David says, I pour out my complaint before the Lord. Cry out to him. Tell him everything. And then inevitably, after he's done lamenting and pouring out, there's a perspective, a new perspective that God gives him. And then after that, it's either he turns it and he's worshiping and praising the Lord, or he says something like this, but I remember your faithfulness. We serve a faithful God, y'all. And he is still on the throne. And no matter how deep we get in that pit, his promises are true. And we can stand on his word. And I would just encourage y'all, cry out to him. Use the Psalms blueprint. Cry out to him, praise him. And he's got you. He's got us, and he's still on the throne. None of this has taken him by surprise. And he's the only one that can deliver us. He's the only one that can heal us. He's the only one who can give us the true rest, tranquility, the haven that we need. No one can satisfy us the way that he can satisfy us. So, all right, there you go. I went a little longer than I thought I would. I'm sorry. All right, until next time.